before we go into your business, I actually was so fascinated about your upbringing. I didn't know too much about you, to be honest. You grew up in Colombia. It seems like you had such strong entrepreneurial women in your family, which you've talked about. And it seems like they really took charge in self-care for themselves, which you don't usually hear when it comes to women. I feel like in America, it's go, go, go if you're successful, and we don't take a beat to take care of who we are and how we feel. So I'm curious, tell me more about your upbringing, because it seems like it was quite influential on your journey.
Yeah, totally. So I grew up in Barranquilla, Colombia, which is as Latinos of a town as you can imagine, right? If you envision a Latin town, that is Barranquilla, Colombia. We're in the north and of Colombia, like in the Atlantic, very influenced by the Caribbean, and people there love beauty. Like I grew up with a mom and a grandmother that used to like slather on cream, like taking care of themselves is nothing that anybody's ashamed of. It's actually what sustains them. And I grew up like, I don't think that they were necessarily like strict or high standards by any means. They were just good standards, because when you start creating rituals since you're a little girl, you grow up having this really good habits that accompanied you through life. So even today, when I put on my skincare this morning, like just the smell of them, it's like the beginning of one of the most relaxing parts of my day, right? Like I never see it as a chore, as something that I don't have time for, something that I actually enjoy and that ultimately replenishes me. And also like I've been taking care of my skin since I'm a little girl. So since I'm young, I'm saving all my money to buy the best products that I can get my hands on, because I grew up with this kind of like mentality that if you take care of your skin young and you take care of it consistently and well, when you're older, it's going to pay off. Which now
Looks
that
like it's
message
paying
is
off.
it's paying
You look
off, but
amazing.
also like thank you. But that message is more relevant than ever now, right? Because we live until like our high 80s, 90s, 100, right? So having a good quality of life has just become like very important, like now more important than ever, because we live longer. And if you look better, you feel better, and that's a great way to age, right? Taking care of your skin, taking care of your body, like you're responsible for it. Like I feel responsibility for doing all the cliches, sleeping the 8 hours, drinking a ton of water,
Yep.
managing stress, exercising, applying your sunscreen, sorry, like your skincare. I think that sunscreen is like my only like skincare sin. Like I am not like super diligent with the sunscreen, but I'm
Really?
also, yeah. I'm not, not that I am by no means like an advocate of like, don't use skincare. Like, that's not what I'm saying. I just like have a hard time finding one that works for me, that I don't break out. And I'm
Sure.
so used to having my skin kind of fresh with nothing on it that I'm not used to it. But if I'm in the sun, if I'm gardening, I definitely have my hat and I do put mineral sunscreen on. But it's just to talk about like the daily things, because honestly, like all of that does matter. Like if you only use skincare, but you're not sleeping, you're not
Yeah.
eating, you're smoking all day, like, you're not going to have like your beauty is not going to be at its peak, let's say, right?
Yeah. And I love how, nowadays people are talking about how health and your beauty, it's all holistic. And you've been thinking this way with food and stress and sleep from a very early age. And
Hmm.
I'm curious, you mentioned you grew up in this family where people like to look good and take care of themselves. And it seems like when you were younger, you dreamed of going into fashion. I believe you had one company. I think you were in high school. So I'm just curious, looking back at the time, what was that business like? And what were maybe some of those early lessons that you learned from that, maybe first business you ever did?
Yeah. So since I'm a little girl, I've been always like hustling around,
Yeah.
like to get like to make some money here and there. So when I was in school, I had like a little scrunchie company at the time with my sister. Then we did like caps and we used to decorate them with like big flowers. And that was like a thing back then. But when I was a little older, I started a fashion company, but I was still in school. And basically, I grew up in the time where you couldn't, like, if you needed anything, you have to go shopping abroad for it, which for us in Barranquilla was really Miami. We would go to Miami to get all the back to school, to get any time that we needed anything important, you would go there. Because then you go to Colombia and you couldn't find anything. So I started designing my own clothes. It first started with me designing kind of like what we would call the uniforms for school. Like we didn't have any uniforms, but I love the idea of just having clothes for when we go to school. So I would buy the fabric, I would go to a seamstress, I would design for me and my sister like maybe 12 pieces. And that's kind of like how it all started. Then after that, I started designing things for me, like little tops, skirts, and I would like it was like my plan every Saturday with my aunt Doris. Like we would go to the beauty store, and then after the beauty store, I would go to the this like fabric store that brought all the fabrics from Europe and from the US, and I would get my fabric. I would go to the seamstress. I would tell the design what she wanted to make, and it was like the plan of every Saturday. I would bring new fabric. She would give me clothes, and so on. But then one day, a lot of people started like wanting the skirt, wanting the shirt. Oh, make two, make three. And I'm like, oh, maybe there's a little business here, but I didn't want to do it alone. And none of the friends around me at the time were really like a good, like I thought that they were gonna be good partners for me. So the most random thing happens. I am like in a pastry shop and I see a girl that I kind of knew, but we're not friends. She's kind of like a really long acquaintance. And I thought to myself, like, this could be a good partner for me. I don't know how or why. I love her style. I love how he looked. Her name is Johanna. And I approach her and I'm like, I know, I actually called her like on the phone. Like, hi, Johanna, I am Tata. You know, we are not friends, but I want to talk to you about this business. And she agreed, and we started designing from there. We would do this every night, and we would spend our nights like going to the seamstress, following up on on the pattern maker, on all the stuff, and we would sell in trunk shows, and we would sell in little boutiques, and and for me, it was a really good lesson in self confidence. Trusting your instincts, trusting your gut, following that, and then I just learned how rewarding it is for you to make something like an actual thing that people can wear, or like recently, like even like seeing Venus Williams like in love with her line, and out of the goodness of her heart she like multiple times put the creams on and enjoys them, and I see that on video. Like it's really fun and it's really rewarding. So that's kind of like, yeah, one of my first, let's say, bigger entrepreneurial ventures while I was in school. And the line was called Censored, because it was quite racy and a little bit like too sexy.
Very edgy. I love that. No, I love that feeling that you were saying, when you're younger, you're realizing, oh, I can put my creativity in something, work hard, make money. It teaches you business. Like you were even saying, like even now when people are using your creams, like that feeling was always there. So it's cool to see that it, fast forward much later, you ended up doing Tata Harper, your skincare brand. But before all of this, you mentioned you're hustling, you're entrepreneurial, you have a pretty successful fashion brand. Like that's not normal. You don't hear that in high school. But your mom, from my understanding, like did not want you to go into fashion. You ended up going the complete opposite. So tell me more, because you would think, you're so successful that would make sense to what you would do next, but it actually didn't go as planned for you.
No, not at all. And like my mom is quite the force. Like I grew up with in a divorced family, and we lived with her mainly. And she kind of like arm twisted me and my sister to study industrial engineering. And for her, like studying fashion was like, that is so narrow. Like you can learn so much more. Like let's try to for something broader, that if maybe fashion, it might be something that you like now, but maybe in the future you want to do something else. It's so limiting just to know fashion, right? So and I thought to myself, like, what's the worst that can happen? I'm terrible at math. Like I'm gonna
Really?
fail. Yeah, like I'm gonna fail. And I can always pivot, if things are not going to plan. At least I tried, and I showed her that I tried, and now I can have carte blanche to study something else. But actually something surprising really happened, because I loved it. I became an like an A plus student studying
Interesting.
engineering. I loved what it taught me. Like it really teaches you how to think. Like it was really interesting. And I think that the biggest lesson there for me, even now that I'm as a mom, is that maybe you shouldn't allow your teenagers just to do whatever they want, right? Like maybe there's some wisdom in what parents have to say, because I do get asked about this all the time, and I'm like, what would I be like if I
Hmm.
wouldn't have studied engineering, right? So yeah, it's interesting that, yeah, that maybe like parents have a lot of wisdom for us.
And I'm curious because you said that she was more particular with you versus your sisters. Do you think she saw something in you where she knew, I know she would do well? Like, why were you the child she was so much harder on?
No, I don't think she saw anything in me. I think that I was just the oldest, right? I was setting the examples for the other two. So
Yeah.
she felt that, it begins with me. So I was kind of like first on the list, first
Yeah.
in line.
Totally, totally. No, that definitely makes sense. And so tell me a little bit, you are enjoying industrial engineering, you graduate. What were you doing? What were some of those early jobs? Because it seems like you kind of zigzagged in a few different things, which I'd love to unpack a little bit.
Yeah. So basically, I graduated from college, and soon thereafter, I met my ex-husband, and I landed in Miami in 2000. And I was desperate to get a job. I'm like, oh my God, I can't be all day going to Publix, like the supermarket, going to the bank. I'm making no money. Like, why am I here? Like I want to come here because I'm depositing checks.
Yeah. And were you
And
with were you dating him at the time or you just kind of came in?
living together. So
Okay.
we met, and like 6 months later, we decided to live together. I left Colombia. It was a huge family drama because in Colombia, like you just don't go and live with people like that. Like you get married. And so my mom didn't talk to me for like 2 years. So she's like, okay, you're going to do that. You're on your own, right? Like you're on your own. You pay your bills. Let's see. Ha ha ha. You're going to be back here in a month. you know but basically I found this amazing job, I with a friend of a friend, and he was starting a restaurant hotel club called Casa Tua in Miami Beach. And it was just him, the chef, and I got hired the first day that I went for my interview. He's like, it's just you and I, the construction site has been stopped. I think that he was like refinancing everything at the time. So I came in a time where everything was in a standstill and we had to like keep moving forward. So I learned a ton about construction. Like I used to manage like the architects, the engineers, like a lot of the site visits when they came to pass inspections. I would help go get permits at the city of Miami Beach. And I learned how to read architectural and engineering drawings, like, structural, mechanical, electrical, and how all that gets put together on top of like interior design drawings. But I promised him that I was not going to leave him until I get him the TCO, until the restaurant opened, which it did. And then by then, my boyfriend had started a residential real estate company in the downtown of Miami, which back then, like in the early 2000, 2002, it was just full of homeless. It was like nothing there. I mean, now it's like the coolest area of Miami, like that whole like Wynwood, Midtown.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know how familiar you are with Miami, but it was just like urban pioneering back then. But it made a lot of sense because it was central to the city, but the whole area was abandoned. So we knew that the Performing Arts Center was coming up. So we started just building in the area, and I started project managing. We did a couple buildings. We also bought a few hotels in Colorado. I decorated them, and but then there was like a bubble around 2006, 2007, and my ex-husband really wanted to move north. He grew up in New York City. So we ended up moving north and moving out of that. And by that time, I had already started building Tata Harper. But all my engineering brain like really allowed me to do all these things. That's what I'm saying. Like you can really like follow up on sequencing, engineering, build a team, build an organization, help build manufacturing facility. It's a very good career, like industrial engineering. Even though I don't necessarily my title say industrial engineering. I'm using everything that I've learned while studying engineering every single day, I think.
Yeah. And I mean, it seems like all the real estate that you were doing before you started working with your then boyfriend at the time, it was very technical, and you're able to kind of zoom into different operational aspects in different fields and learn it. And the same thing for when you started getting into real estate. It seems like very broad in different industries, but you are able to zoom in operationally and work through that, which is,
Yeah.
a skill set and like a thought process, it seems like.
And I feel that that's been kind of like the theme of my career, like of my
Mhm.
of my professional life, is that I have done things that I have not necessarily have the training for or the skills for, but I've learned that you can learn a lot. You can surround yourself with the right people and you can learn those skills that you don't have. And I think that that's probably like one of the biggest lessons that I've had throughout my life, is that the fact that you don't know how to do something doesn't prevent you from starting an idea that you have, because there's always people to help you or that can come in to do other things, right? Like as well.
That's huge. And I think a lot of people don't start because they don't have that mentality that you just said. And I'm curious, when did you have that confidence of like, oh, I can figure things out? Because not everybody has that mentality. And I do agree, it's probably one of your biggest success factors in life is the way you think.
Yeah, and like that curiosity and that you're always learning. Like I feel that I have so much to learn. I'm learning every day from my team, from my customers, from people in general. Um, I think that honestly, it was kind of like something that I developed, just starting little things and knowing that what you do, people like, and they're willing to pay for it, and that they make a difference. And then you just start like sharpening that muscle. And also like I've always felt that you can learn anything that you put your mind in. Like I've never let like not knowing something deter me from doing something that it's in my mind, just because I know that if I want to, I can learn it and I would know how to do it.
Yeah, I love that. And that confidence is huge. And I think you living these different life experiences and taking the risk and being in a new situation, figuring that out, going into another life situation, figuring that out, like all those steps build that confidence, which I love. So I'm just sharing that because in case anyone is like, why don't I have that? Like start small, start with
Yeah.
being in any new situation, learn it, and you'll build that confidence in yourself. So I'm curious, you mentioned that, you guys wanted to leave Miami. There was a bit of a lull. You said you were working on this skincare on the side. So tell me, like, was this a dream you always had? Where did the inspiration come for you to just start tinkering on the side?
No, I never had a dream. I had a dream of becoming a fashion designer, but like the skincare, to be the skincare entrepreneur, like never crossed my mind, which is bizarre because I love beauty so much, but it just never crossed my mind. I've always loved beauty, as I said. So beauty was really an important part of my routine. And then in early 2000s, my stepdad got diagnosed with cancer, and he's a four-time cancer survivor that has survived because he has gone to amazing clinics, but also because he has changed his lifestyle in a really big way. And I remember the doctors always talking about like the toxic load, like paying attention to the things that you do every day, like how do they affect you, that it's not the things that happen every couple months that matter, but the things that are happening repeatedly in your life every single day, and how we can't control everything, but there are a lot of things that you can control, and that let's control them. So I remember then being like, okay, so I had always been kind of like a health enthusiast, but I had never really gone past exercise and eating a lot of vegetables and fruits. But all of a sudden I'm like, oh, is this organic? Oh, okay, grown without pesticides and fertilizers. Um, like wanna, like think about how I'm cleaning my home and what type of chemicals I'm getting in touch with just like all those liquids. Even like dry cleaning, I started thinking about everything, but really skincare was like my last frontier, because a lot of the natural solutions were mainly found in natural food stores, like not in place. Like I was always been like a very serious skincare customer. So now I'm like trying to find a solution in places where, yeah, they have natural things and they have natural products, but they don't necessarily are super high tech, or the experience is not meant for somebody like me. And I had all this really disappointing experiences, because a lot of that movement, a lot of like the natural beauty movement came from food, like actually food was a catalyst for so many, right? Like the wellness industry just in general. So, but I was really surprised that the most precious raw materials, right, that come from all these beautiful plants and everything were treated in such a low end way. Like, why? But then you go to Neiman's and they show you things with algae, things with orchids, things with all this. But then you look at the label and all of those precious natural ingredients are mixed with like car lubricants and like propylene glycol that it's antifreeze. Like, so in my mind, I was just like extremely curious. Like, number one, why are they treating raw materials that are so precious, like all these natural substances, and they're just really available, like the real deal in like this, food stores, shown in a very low end and like lacking performance. But then the stuff that had the performance had the ingredients, but mixed with other things that were all like super industrial grade,
Mm.
right? That I don't want to be putting in my skin every day. So I didn't know what to do. I'm like, how am I going to replace like my super high tech, like Swiss skincare line with like what? So I became increasingly, like, I became just like so motivated to make this happen. And I remember that I hired, a consultant, like we all do, right? Like I had no idea about the industry. And I remember the consultant just being obsessed with our marketing plan, with our story, with the packaging. And I was like, wait, but what about the formulas? What about the ingredients? What about how we're making it? And she was like, don't worry about that. Like there's all of that gets subcontracted, like this industry is filled with third party labs that they will make your formulas for every brand. They'll make them for you. You'll be up and running in 4 to 6 months. And then when it comes to production, like there's contract manufacturers, they also make the products for everybody. You don't have to invest in facility. You just have to hire a good one that make brands that you like, and that's it. And I felt like cheated. I felt all of a sudden like this love for beauty. Like I felt that I've been cheated. It's like, oh, okay. So all of these brands, and I remember touring all these labs, all this facility, and being like, oh, so this is actually like not formulated in Switzerland. Like you make some of their products here. Oh, like actually that brand is formulated by you too, and this one and that one. I was like, oh my God. And then I would go and tour like manufacturing facilities and I'll be like, oh, this is actually also all produced here. And I thought, like, as a customer, like naive customer, that every brand had unique things, that they make their own products, that they produce them. So I kind of like in myself, as part of that disappointment, I'm like, I just want to keep this fantasy alive. Like, I want to feel that I'm ready to do everything. Like, I don't need to like shortcut anything. So what I realized is that a lot of the third party labs anyway couldn't do what I wanted to do. Like, like they had bases and they could try to make a formula semi customized, but it was going to be very similar to what was already out there, but with a new hero ingredient or
Yeah.
whatever, or, oh, you're from Colombia. Let's have this amazing thing from the Amazons, or I don't know what on the other. And then same for contract manufacturing. It was like you would go there, they're like, yeah, you give us your formula, we make it for you. You have to make like 5,000 of each. And I would be like, 5,000 of each? Wow, by the time that I go through all of that, like it's gonna expire, like, these things are gonna be creating so much trash just because this guy is making them for me and this is like the smallest that they can make. So I'm like, I need to have a different approach. I need a different plan. And that I think was probably like one of the most important decisions that I made, that of like, I'm going to do everything ourselves. So my first years, like I would say like my first 5 years were knee deep in chemistry, learning about skin biology from skin biology experts. I would like buy tons of books, and that's where I would find even like my first like scientists to work with. Like I would look at their bio, I would contact them, I
I
would
love
travel to
that.
London, talk to them. I would go to every ingredient show and become very nerdy with like the scientists of different trade shows that are not for labs but for ingredient manufacturers, for people that develop technologies for you to buy to make products, right? Like your raw materials. Those are the trade shows. So I became really close with like the preservative scientists in Germany that they have the best preservation systems. I became really close with the Italian emulsification agents, and they helped me build how water and oil mix together to create creams. And I became really close to a lot of like very of labs that deal with rare raw materials, because they really do have like rare compounds that do things that are not the things that we're used to listening to, right? Like I think that as a skincare customer, like a lot of the issues around your skin are simplified around wrinkles, brightness, glow, whatever, right? Moisture, but your skin has so many processes going at once, enzymes that your skin create to age you that need to be neutralized. There's so many different types of collagen. Your skin gets thin, we lose volume, et cetera, et cetera. So just really, I wanted to create a product that I remember as a customer, I was like, I have to buy so many single active products
Yeah.
to just cover my bases, because it seems that I need them all. Like, why isn't it they just make a product that has everything so I can go into a diet, but that all the products are multi-active, and that all of that just took like a really long time. And I also learned that there's a very creative side about formulation. And even though I'm not a formulator and I never formulate our products, I am like the formula architect, and it's extremely creative and it's extremely fun to be able to make those decisions around all the molecules and all the processes that you're affecting in the skin all at once. And same goes for manufacturing. So that's where I decided to build our manufacturing facility in the farm, because I wanted to control our manufacturing as well. I wanted to make only what we need. I don't want to create, like a lot of people think of sustainability and they typically think of packaging, and rarely is manufacturing discussed. But the reality is that the way that you make things also affects how sustainable you are, because if you use a lot of resources to make something but then half of it becomes trash because you made more than what you need, how sustainable is that? And also, like, I want a formula that it's as fresh as possible, not something that it's been sitting in a warehouse for almost a year by the time that it gets to stores. So that's where the farm came into play.
Were you living on the farm already? Did you buy the property knowing, oh, I want to tinker a little bit because of this like skincare idea that you were working on?
No, so we've had the farm since 2003,
Oh, so a long time.
because
Okay.
we wanted a farm, and eventually we knew we were going to move to New York. So we're like, okay, I'll move to New York if I really have a farm to escape to. So no, the farm was there, and I really love this idea. Like that was a dream of being able to live in the farm. I'm like, how can I make living in this farm work? I mean, back then it was like so hard. I'm like, I would love to raise my kids here, but how do you do that, right? So that's when I think that one day I was like in the front porch, just like thinking about the company and all these decisions, and we had like 30,000 square feet of like abandoned dairy barns. And I'm like, well, a lot of companies start in garages, but
Yeah.
like maybe ours need to start in these barns here. So that's how it all started. I'm like, okay, let's use all these barns, and also it's like really nice when you're, in my case, where I'm creating products that are all derived from nature and that you're immersed and doing science in the context of nature, is just very inspiring for me. So yeah, all of that is very fashionable now, but
Yeah.
back then it was kind of like how I figured that I was going to be able to live in that farm. So that's how the farm came to be, is just really a way for us to produce everything, be completely responsible of everything that we make, and also make exactly that what we need, and also at the same time allowed me to live there for 11 years.
Wow. It's so interesting. And I love your story, because I feel like nowadays people want to launch products quickly and they want to grow quickly. And it's like all the women similar to you who I've interviewed, it's taking a lot of time to build that product. And you said it took 5 years. Like we're
Yeah.
in our business 1 year into making one of our products even better. And I'm like getting all these gray hairs and I'm 1 year in because it's really tough. But 5 years of you being in it. And it seems like your like genuine curiosity kind of led you, but were you ever impatient? Like, dang, I just want this product done, or I want this down, because I'm sure you hit so many blockers along the way of like, okay, this is what I want, but then how do I get it, in one formula or, whatever the case that might be.
Yeah, I think that definitely, especially if you're trying to create something that it's new, unique, that no one has done, that also make people's lives better, that it's meaningful and relevant, it does take time. Still today, it takes
Yeah.
us like 3 years to make all of our products, every new product, because it's a new creation. So the only thing that I have to say is that if you want to make something really unique, most likely and revolutionary, like most likely it's gonna take time, right? It's gonna take a lot of time. I mean, we've been pioneering this movement of luxury skincare, since we started, right? Before like this didn't exist. And also like since the beginning, the clean standards at its highest levels, because we don't use any synthetic ingredient. It's not like we are a old company that is trying to change and modify and quietly remove controversial chemicals. Like that's the way that we were conceived, right? Because
Yeah.
it's like if you're not sustainable, then that means you're unsustainable. So at some point it needs to change, right? So let's just do things right from the beginning. And I think that like when we started, there was no clean beauty, right? That's something that was kind of like a recent invention, and I think that in the near future, like there's gonna be very few dirty products because a lot of brands quietly remove a lot of controversial chemicals. So not everything will be natural, but if for sure, most of it will be clean.
Yeah. And then going back, I believe 2010, like you said, you were the pioneer in creating any kind of clean product on the farm. Like that was not normal by any means. You really revolutionized the industry. And I'm curious, how did you create awareness and education? Because I would believe at that time, people would be like, oh, a natural product, it's ineffective. Like I'm sure it was an uphill battle to get the eyes and awareness. So how did you do that in the early days once you kind of put together your key set of products?
I think that because the products are so powerful and so the results are so undeniable, is like that's they speak for themselves. Like obviously education was a key part of our launch strategy, just because like we brought awareness to the fact that there's some chemicals that are not really good to be putting in our skin, how they absorb, all that information that came, like we obviously helped spread the word so that whomever cared and this was important, they would have the information. But like, I think that my biggest job was just to educate people and re-educate people, because people forget about like how powerful plant molecules are. A lot of them are even like the backbone of a lot of like our modern medicine, like aspirin and even coffee. It's like a
Mm.
number one stimulant. So, I mean, I find it funny that people don't know how powerful natural ingredients are, but that's kind of like the realities. But yeah, we had to educate, and also educate a lot on like what being natural meant to us, right? Because still, and even today, I get asked about all the time, like we have very strict standards, and we have a zero synthetic ingredient tolerance. So we are completely natural, and every single one of our products are have a third party certification from EcoCert, which that tells their clients that 100% of the ingredients are natural. It gives their organic content, but also like our sustainability efforts were not just limited to our raw materials, like also the way that we make things, and having a zero waste facility is part of like what we thought that it was always important, and really like trying to not pollute like the air, the water, the land. Like that's why a lot of our skincare goes down the drain, right? You wash and it just goes and down the water, like the packaging end up in your trash or your recycling. So that's why also like the packaging that we use is very sustainable, and why like upwards of like 97% of our packaging is glass, because glass is infinitely recyclable. So that's what true sustainability really means to me. Is not that the efforts around sustainability really revolve around things that we do as a brand, not like, and the product in and of itself, not like, oh, we buy our carbon emissions or we offset this. It's like, in order to, I think, nowadays to have a true sustainable product is like the product in and of itself, like what you sell, what you do every day needs to be sustainable, right? So that's what we try to do.
Yeah, I love the way you look at that because I haven't heard it from that angle, but it definitely makes sense. And going back to the early days, you mentioned obviously these products spoke for themselves, and I think you, from my understanding, would get a lot of friends and family early on. Like, would you do these like small? I don't want to say seminars, but like kind of like the spa parties your grandmother did back in the day. Is that kind of how you started when you were just getting it out there? And when did you know you were onto something? You're like, oh, this is really sticking.
I started doing a lot of those parties early on because I was so excited, like I have been working with all the scientists for so long and creating all this years and years of beauty concoctions that even like my ex-husband was like, what is going on? Like, what are you making? Are we ever you're gonna finish this? And I'm like, oh, I'm so close. I'm so close. But
Yeah.
no, I was super excited because I was working so hard at making like this new technology and this new formulations that I always wanted to gather friends and get their opinions and see what they thought, what results did they get. That's actually how we got our first customers, is through a lot of those groups that I did. And and I enjoy them so much that still today I do them. Like I am
Yeah.
totally addicted to them. I'm addicted to the whole thing, like gathering women together to beautify themselves, to take a moment out of their busy schedule to dedicate to them. I also teach them all the things that I've learned, well, a lot of the things that I've learned about how to take care of your skin, how to layer, how to apply things, what's best for you, right? Which are rare recommendations nowadays, which we're flooded with so much misinformation and so much stuff that you don't even know what to trust, right? And then the ultimate reward of seeing everybody so happy with their skin glistening and looking so healthy, and no one wants to put makeup back on. Like,
That's
I
a
mean, what
dream.
is a better reward? I think that I
Yeah.
do those classes more for me and for my team, so we all feel good about all this crazy stuff that we do
Yeah.
and how it's worthwhile and how it makes people's lives better. That it is really the ultimate reward, and I plan to continue doing them.
Yeah. And I'm curious, I believe, if I remember correctly, that you guys had, was it like a 10-page spread in Vogue, like very early on? I mean, that's a big deal. So tell me, how did you get into that? And did that really take you guys to the next level and put you on the map?
Yeah, I mean, that's like, talk about like one of my proudest moments. Definitely, it wasn't a 10 page, but it was like an eight page spread in Vogue. And it came out of like one of the people that came to my classes. She ended up working in Vogue. She ended up sharing something over there. And then Sarah Brown happened to be writing the story about like farm to face or I don't know what. And then our friend Vanessa, which was our publicist when we launched, she's like, I have the story for you. And then it like all happened like in the perfect storm of like, we got the 8 page spread. We started selling at Space and K when they launched in the US, their stores in the US. That was our first retailer. So yeah, that's kind of like it all happened like boom, all at once. But definitely, it put us on the map in a big way.
During all this, you had three young kids, right? Or what? How old were your kids at the time when you were like really getting this momentum and launching the business?
Well, Hunter was born in 2008, and I
Okay.
was already at the farm. So when I launched, I was 2 years old, and Grace was like a baby. So I would travel everywhere, with them, and and with someone to help me with them when I was working. But I would travel nonstop with them before they started school and preschool. They would just be attached to me, and we would go to California, I would go to Miami. We would like, they helped me with the launch in Paris, like they still
Ah,
came.
amazing.
And it was, it was just fun having them around like that. Obviously, then I started traveling solo once I started school. But yeah, I mean, honestly, motherhood is tough. It's tough for everybody, right? Like I feel that the modern challenges of motherhood is something that doesn't, that if you're a mother, you know what I'm talking about. It's a lot, and I don't know that because I have 3 kids, I can claim more of a challenge than any other mom, right? There's some people that have to be having 2 to 3 jobs to make ends meet. I have the same conflicts as everybody else, right? Balancing all that modern demand and then all the work responsibilities. And the one thing that I have to say is that it does require excellent scheduling and planning.
Yeah. And I wanted to talk about that because we don't have any kids yet, but even with me launching my business, like one thing my husband has told me, like from the beginning, he's, older, has his own businesses. And he's like, you just got to get good at planning. And I'm like, as our lives are getting bigger as a couple and our businesses, I'm like, wow, that makes so much sense. So tell me more about that because I feel like some people look at me and they're like, but if you plan so much, then you're so rigid. I'm like, no, planning gives you freedom. Like I can be calm and do a podcast while I'm still running a business, right? So tell me more about just the importance of like scheduling and planning and what that looks like.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people think that things are just going to fall in place. But the reality is that you need to spend time planning your time. I spend
Yeah.
a lot of time planning my time. I was actually, so I am ruled by this thing that between me and my assistant Chelsea, we call the matrix. And the matrix has all of the meetings that I do, whether they're weekly or they're monthly or they're quarterly or they're just once a year. And every month we look at the matrix and we're like, is everything fitting in? How much travel can I do? Et cetera, et cetera. And I also know all the people that I need to talk to, whether it's in a weekly basis or in a monthly basis or bi-weekly or whatever. So I build it into this calendar and I have to get rid of other things that I'm no longer doing. And I revisit this like every 6 months.
Okay.
And yeah, and it's so important. I think that without that, I feel lost. Like I feel completely lost. Like I can't function in chaos. And obviously as an entrepreneur, it's one of those things that you really have to know how to manage your time so that you can get a lot done and work smart and not, like you can really work smart, but making sure that you're only in the places that you're really needed and that only you can do, right? Like if
Mm-hmm.
other people on the team can do it, why am I spending any time there? So yeah, I have this thing called a matrix. I mean, it is as rigid as you want to make it, right? Because I can always have like a priorities come up, and then I look at my week, and I'm like, you know what? This month I really don't need that. I'm good. Like I really need to tackle this with this team of this new thing or this new opportunity or whatever, right? So it's up to you. So like you can be as strict or as loose as you want, but I think that it does create an amazing framework for
Mm-hmm.
organization and also to build in like I do these meetings that I do quarterly with my assistant and some of the people that I travel with, and we look 4 months ahead. So right now we are deep in 25, thinking about all the months. So every month I'm like, oh, this month Grace, my daughter's birthday, so I cannot travel that week. This week I have this. So you balance between your home commitments and your professional commitments, and
Mm-hmm.
then you're able to make sure that you're there for both.
I love that versus like being reactionary and you're feeling like pulled, like you have personal stuff that comes up and then the business stuff and you just feel like chaotic, which I feel like as an entrepreneur, CEO, founder, it's like the worst situation to be in. Like, so someone was telling me, they're like, I don't use my calendar. I'm like, well, how do you operate? I would be lost.
Unnecessary stress, like unnecessary stress.
Exactly.
You just need to spend, like for me, I take my Monday mornings to organize myself, reply to any big emails that are not yes, no, to like look at like things that are piled up, read things, like
Mm-hmm.
follow up, like dictate a lot of emails to my assistant, like follow up with people. Tuesday mornings, I'm with her going over all the things that have piled up on her end and going over my schedule.
Got it. And Monday, do you spend is that most of the day?
No,
What
no,
you
no. Most of the day, the mornings, like let's
just the
say
morning. Yeah.
9 to noon.
Yeah, see, I love that because sometimes people think planning, I've realized it doesn't just take 30 minutes. You really get into it. In the beginning, you're like, dang, I wasted 3 hours, but it's so important because
Yeah,
sometimes
no,
you
no,
don't
no.
feel like
You're
it's
not wasting.
productive.
I
Yeah.
clear my inbox, which gives me immediate sense of relief. I have conversations that I have not able to have with different team members because I've been in back-to-back meetings. So that morning opens up a slot that I can just be on the phone, like, hey, I got your email. These are my thoughts. Like sometimes all those things just don't come to life well on email, and it does need
Yeah.
a little bit of a back and forth. So that Monday morning I do tons of that, and then Tuesday I continue doing that, but now with my assistant and whatever has come her way, plus my schedule, conflicts, priorities. Like she keeps a list for me of like, hey, when we talk on Tuesday, make sure that we talk about this and that. So she brings that list, and I look at my week and I'm like, how am I gonna fit all this? I need an hour here, I need 45 there, I don't need this, change that, ask her, like that type of thing.
Yeah, I love that. And then with our Wednesday, Thursday, Fridays, like team meetings, or
Hmm.
that's how, oh, I
Yeah.
love that.
And also Monday afternoon and Tuesday afternoon. Uh-huh.
And okay, so you have slots then. I mean, so
Yeah.
you're quite
So the
busy.
afternoon. So this is happening 9 to noon. And then there's like a quick like break for lunch. And then I start like at 1:30 again in back to backs on whatever is it that I just decided that was important, right? Like,
That
so
you have
that begins.
exactly. Exactly. Because if you're not deciding what's important, everyone on your team thinks what they're doing is important as they should, but it's not important to you at that moment, at that day. So you're like
Yeah,
managing.
exactly. So I
Yeah.
let them know, have this meeting, do not reschedule, have this meeting without me,
Yes.
continue on, send me an email with anything that contradicts anything that we have discussed before or whatever. But to have that meeting because I need to take care of this other thing.
That's good.
So I alert
Yeah.
them.
You alert them. I'm taking notes because I tend to be like wanting to be part of anything. We're significantly smaller than obviously your team now, but it's good to practice that muscle because as a CEO, like you can't be part of every little thing as a business scales. And that's not the right thing for the business. So I love how you communicate that to the team. Like you
I
got
think
this.
that if that's the case, then you don't have the right people.
Yeah. I have a question. When you guys were smaller, and you're still probably scrappy as a business, but when you were significantly smaller, did you wait to hire the right person and put money behind it? Or how did you kind of approach hiring in those early days?
I think that a combination of things. Sometimes it's like, I need someone here now,
Yeah.
and whomever came started, and some worked out and some didn't. Like I remember I had an intern in my early days that she was our herbalist in the garden because we also grow in Vermont some of the herbs for our skincare. And she ended up being amazing at production planning. She ended up being an assistant for me for a while. She ended up like doing the lab stuff. So it's like sometimes you give people chances and they surprise you, and sometimes they're a disappointment, but then you have to move on. It's like, I mean, ideally, like at the beginning, I didn't really understand the importance of the team as much as I do now. That with time, you realize that when you have the right person doing the right thing and that have the right chemistry with you and that you guys are aligned in so many aspects, like it makes life so much easier and it makes things flow without you.
And that's like the magic is like finding the right person for the team, making sure they're aligned with
Yeah.
you and the chemistry. It's huge.
Yeah, or that actually have things and skills that you don't have, right? Which is what you need. Like, it's like, I don't know that, but you do, like help with this or that. And honestly, like you spend so much time with your team.
Yeah.
Being an entrepreneur, like you spend so much time that having the right chemistry and someone that really understand the ultimate vision and that also knows how to do things. Because I don't like to surround myself with people that just say yes to everything. Like I actually, I'm pretty an assertive person, but I love consensus, and I also am very open to people having an opinion that is different than mine, and being like, okay, let's go with that. And I think that it's really important, even as an entrepreneur, if you want to start a company, having a partner or two with complementary skills is really key. Like I think that going at it solo, it's a mistake.
Interesting that you said it's a mistake. And why do you feel like it's a mistake looking at your journey so far?
Because I think that like sometimes you're so like my ex-husband was always my partner, and he has a way of seeing things that is different than mine, and I have ways of seeing things that are different than his. So when there's moments of conflict, challenge, we speak, and there's always wisdom on both sides,
Mm-hmm.
Like it's
Mm-hmm.
really, I can't explain. Like people that you respect and that you respect their judgment and how they think, but that don't necessarily think exactly how you do is key in business.
Totally. I agree. And I'm curious because you were a solo founder, how did you build that did you build that community around you? For example, did you have advisors or people you respected that you would bounce ideas off of?
Yeah, and I was not a solo founder. My ex-husband founded this company
Okay,
with
with
me.
both of you.
Yeah, it was kind of like my idea, and I put all the energy behind it at first, but then it became both of us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it became both of us because he had skills that I didn't have, and vice versa. Yeah, I think that it's key having to be surrounded yourself with people that have done different things, that have words of wisdom, that think differently, that you really like how they think, that you really respect, and run things by them. People have so many blind spots, right? Like, and I have so many blind spots, and we all do. And sometimes you need someone else involved so they can point them out.
Totally. And then I mean, as you said, like I think before we started the podcast, you're like, it's still a hustle and you're figuring things out no matter how big the business is. So it's nice to bounce ideas because sometimes I'm like, I don't know. What do you think? And you can kind of like, they'll ask you the right questions and you're like, I didn't
Yeah.
even think about that. Like I'm so deep in operations and my sister-in-law is our co-founder and I will chat things with her and she'll ask the simplest question that solves everything. I'm like, the
Yeah.
fact that you're not knee deep in my world is like the biggest gift I could have. So it's nice to have
Yeah.
complementary skill sets
Yeah.
and yeah, things to bounce off. So I love that.
Yeah, I mean, being an entrepreneur is challenging, right? Like, because it's like the absolute fate of the business and that of your employees, like, relies on your decisions. Like, that's like, I always felt the weight of that. And also that you can never really stop thinking about the business,
Yeah.
no where you are. You're on vacation, you're on the weekends, you're always thinking about the business, and it's impossible to get it all done. Right, the moment that you do it all, there's 10 more things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right, so it's a lifestyle, it could be challenging for some people because the air can get really thin around so many areas of, but it's rewarding, and if you don't mind it, it's amazing.
You've clearly been doing this for over a decade, but how have you managed that weight? You mentioned something earlier of like you love these classes and being in front of women. I would assume that really energizes you, but how have you continued to energize yourself? Because it is tough. You're never not thinking about it. It is more of a weight, especially the bigger your team gets, the bigger the scale is. So, how do you manage it for yourself?
I think that you need to have a rich personal life on the side. It can be lonely. Like, I remember it's one of the reasons why I left the farm, because it started becoming a little lonely for me there. And then you don't have that. But I have three kids, and the three kids keep you entertained and
Yeah.
your mind out of things, even if you don't want to. Like, they force you just through their activities. Like, weekends are busy, the nighttime, like they want to talk to you, they want to see you. So having that at home, a busy home, really helps. And then I think that also I really enjoy spending a lot of time alone.
Mm.
I and recharging. That's my way of recharging. So I do, like, I go in the bath. I make a bath for myself almost every night. I have a sauna and I go in there. I listen to podcasts. I go exercising. I go hiking with friends. I live with five dogs. So they also, so, it's like I have a lot of like rich environment around me so that you're not always all about your problems, because it's like your life can't be just about like, oh my God, I have all these things to do on this list, and you become just like a robot, which you do.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
did for a while. I
Yeah.
remember I was a while, and I think I went into like a mini depression
Yeah.
after I had all the three kids and all that work and all, and then I got divorced, like it's a lot that come out your way. But then having a rich support system and having friends and a busy life around you helps you through those times, which inevitably come for everybody in one way or another, right?
Yeah, I love that. That's so powerful. I think it just gives you perspective because sometimes you can be all in your problem, but when you have a rich personal life, friends, family, it could really make all the difference. And a good reminder for me because you could easily turn into a robot. I'm for sure a robot, 100%. I'm like, if it wasn't for my friends and family, like I would be even crazier. So it's good to hear examples like you to just continue to hone in on community and your personal
It's
life.
good. It's not a waste of time to speak to your friends, to speak to your mom, to go out on hikes, to spend time with you, and also like find like small moments of joy throughout the day. Like, doesn't need to be like this party, but like having a warm tea, 5 minutes, like looking out the window, and or having like a delicious piece of chocolate, or like putting your skincare on, like all that adds up.
It's so true. Because life, as you mentioned, I mean, everything that you've gone through, like it just gets harder and things will get thrown at you that you don't expect or know. So it's like, how do you build that joy and that like resilience factor? And it's like just honoring you and enjoying your life and making sure it's rich in different ways. So that is like such good advice. I love that. I'm definitely,
But the other thing that I have to say is that being busy is good.
yeah,
Being busy is good. Like sometimes when you are
yeah,
not busy, like you start creating problems that don't exist. So, and also like for me to conquer fears, like being busy is the way that I do it. I stay busy, and then you don't think about them because there's just so much to do that you're just focused on everything that needs to happen. And I think that that's one of those things that I do when I feel a little down or you're
yeah.
like a little doubtful is like, the antidote to fear is action. So get absolutely busy for the times to be busy. Obviously, not the weekend, not like in the early morning, not at 4 a.m. because you're not sleeping, but like in the times, like be busy.
Like action, like put yourself in action when you're feeling that doubt or that uneasiness.
Yeah, that way you don't have time for that, like that way you just don't have time to feel any of those things because there's just so much to do.
Yeah, I joke we don't have kids, but I'm like, man, I can't wait to have kids one day because my life will be a little like I have to have a distraction. Like they
Yeah.
take
Uh-huh.
me out, So
Yeah.
I know there's other challenges of running a business and having a family, but I see that as a benefit to have like a distraction that you
Yeah.
have.
And also, like, don't abandon your friendships, Like, I was actually surprised that that I have any friends left just because after all, so many years of being, so busy and traveling so much. So I learned to nourish a lot of my relationships, even if they're like a phone call. Like, I still speak to a lot of my high school friends. I have a lot of like friends that I travel with, that I do things with, that I'm in touch with, that I have dinner with. So, having that is very important.
Yeah, I love that. Oh my goodness. Well, I want to end maybe on one quick last question. We didn't chat too much about this, but I know you guys ended up selling 2 years ago. I believe it has been 2 years already, which is a
Yeah.
huge
No,
accomplishment.
it's yeah, actually, yeah, October. October
Oh
is
my,
this this
October.
month.
Wow. Well, happy 2 year official anniversary. And I'm just curious, like, how did that opportunity kind of come about? Were you guys looking to exit? And I'd love to just hear about that transition because I know it's not an easy one for finding the right partner for a lot of entrepreneurs.
Yeah. And also it's a very emotional moment for a founder, right? To sell your company. I mean, my kids are teenagers and they haven't like gone to college yet, or like they haven't graduated or like been married, but I imagine that it's something like that. I think that for us in the last 2 years, it's been all about like learning how to work with one another, right? To like finally taking the brand to all the places that it needs to go, but now with more support, more help. And we are definitely a different type of brand in their portfolio. We're the first brand that they acquire because a lot of the brands that Amore Pacific has, they've been incubated by the chairman. So they've been started by them. So we are kind of like an odd bird in their organization, but they are super respectful. They have kept everything exactly, all of the values, all the principles, the way that we do things, and it's more about like how do we work together. The opportunity started like in 2020, I think, when we were trying to exit our private equity partners because they had been with us for a really long time and we were working with Goldman, and they came along and this all happened like that. And no, we were not thinking of selling our stakes in the company, but it just ended up being that way. And I'm happy because I think that they are the right group for taking Tata Harper to new heights. So
And when did you bring in, remind me, because you guys were self-funded and then you brought in private equity. I think that was only the raise that you did. It was bringing, right?
mhm.
Was it a one-time
Yeah, and
thing?
they participated in every race, and they were great, 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 great people.
Yeah, amazing. Oh my gosh. Well, Tata, I so appreciate you being here. I feel like I could pick your brains for hours on everything, but this was such a joy. I left feeling just so inspired. Thank you for joining us today.
Well, we can do a part two in
Yeah.
another time. Mwah. Thank you so much. It was so fun to talk to you.